Hello, welcome to our data class today. In our today's class, we want to talk about drop-down lists and range name, how to create drop-down lists, and how to use range name. I'm your tutor, Sir Josh. In our today's class, we want to look at how we can create drop-down lists. Have you ever wondered how drop-down list is created? Let's say we have a situation where you are entering record into an Excel sheet and you want a list where you can select from. In this very case, we have order number, we have customer name, we have location, we have stores. Now, here we have the names of some customers who want to be entering into this very table. So how do we do that? We want a situation where drop-down list is very useful, where you have a list that is repeatedly entered in your record. So to create a drop-down list, we are going to use a very simple method to create a drop-down list. All you need to do is highlight the area where you want the list to affect. Highlight the area where you want the list to affect. Now I've highlighted this particular area. I want a situation where if I enter the order number, then when I come to this very point, I should be able to select from the list of my customers. So to do that, go to your menu bar. Under your menu bar, you see data. When you click on data, under data, we have this icon here, which is data validation. Data validation. So we are going to use data validation to get this done. So all you need to do is click on data validation. When you click on data validation, you are going to have a dialog box like this. And in this dialog box, by default, Excel sets each of the cells to receive any record. Excel sets each of the cells to receive any value. We'll talk about any value. It can be number, it can be alphabet, it can be special characters. So Excel sets each of these cells to receive any value by default. But what we want to do in this case is that we don't want it to receive any value by default. We want Excel to want the cell to have a list. So in this very case now, we are now going to say allow, under allow, remove it from any value to list. Now, if we change this to list, what Excel is going to tell us is that, okay, you want to make use of list in this very part. But where do you have the source? Where is the list that I'm going to use in this very area? So in that case now, you have source. Just drop your cursor there. When you drop your cursor there, we have many ways to do this. But I want to use a very simple method here first. So what I'm going to use now is say, where is the source of our list? We have our list here. So when I drop my cursor here, I can simply come out of that very environment and then highlight the list that I want to use. This is my list. So I can just simply highlight the list. What I'm simply telling Excel is that I don't want you to enter any value here in this very area. What I want you to enter in this very area is anything from my list. So that is why I highlighted the area where the record are. So after doing that, I'll click on OK. When I click on OK, you will notice that a small combo have appeared here, which was not there before. So that is one of the ways we can create a drop-down list. Let's test this whether it's working. Now we have an order. The first person came in and dropped an order. That is 001. Let's say this is the order number. And here we want the name of the customer. So instead of typing the name of the customer, we can simply click on our drop-down list and we are now going to see the name of all our customers. And let's say this person is Paul. We select that. So the next person here is dropping an order of 10002. Now this is the order number of the next person, and let's say this person is let's say Richard. I can simply start with arrow. That is, I can simply start with typing arrow E like this now to try to enter a name. But if this name that I've entered, now let's say I'm entering a name Rich, and I try to click add like this, Excel is going to tell me that no, you cannot enter this record because this record is not in the members, in the member we have here. That is not in the list. So all I need to do is make sure that I'm entering a valid name. All I need to do is to make sure that I'm entering a valid name. So I have my Richard here. I'll now choose Richard. So what we are looking at is at the same time we are looking at data validation. That is why we are using this data validation. Now it's trying to validate whatever record that enter our table, so that the wrong data will not enter our table, so that the wrong record will not be entered into this particular table. Now when we come to the next person here, we have 1003. When we go to 1003, we can click on our drop down list for 1003, and let's say this person is a Sheriff. So we can go down here and we see Sherry. We click there. So this is how our drop down list is being made. Creating a drop down list. So you can just simply scroll down. You will see the name of the person you want to choose, and then you drop that name. This is one method of creating our drop down list. But the other way around, this method is a very simple method of creating a drop down list, but we want to do this in a more professional way. So that brings us to something called range name. So I'm going to do away with this. So we have discarded this. I'm going to remove this very one here, the drop down list we did. So now we don't have any drop down list here. We don't want a situation where this record are shown here. So what we want to do is we can move this record to a separate location. We can move this record. I want to cut this record away from this location, and let's say I have a sheet here, and this sheet is the sheet where I have my customers. Let's say I have the names of all my customers in a particular sheet or in a particular table. Now this is what I have here, the names of all the customers. I don't want them to appear on this particular other sheet that we are working on. So we are not going to be using this, we are not going to be referring to this very sheet in our subsequent work. Now that brings us to range name. When we talk about range, what is a range? We can say if I highlight this number of record, this number of cells like this, if I highlight this number of cells like this, I can say, okay, this is a range. Now, if I highlight just this record like this, this very row like this, I can say this is a range. So when we talk about range, we are talking about a particular area. We are trying to define a particular area. So Excel have what we call range name that we can find under the formula menu. Now I've just highlighted this very area, and let's say this area, I call this area a range. If I want Excel to recognize this very area as a range, I have to give this area a name. So a range can be a single cell. A range can be a single cell. Let's say this is, let me just fill this with a particular color. Let's say this is a range that I want to define. So we'll talk about a range. A range can be a group of cells that you want to define. It can be a row. It can be a row, an entire row. It can be an entire column. It can be a group of cells. It can be a single cell. Take note. A range can be a column or group of columns. It can be a single row or group of rows. It can be a single cell or group of cells. So all you need to do is to give that very range a name. And Excel will recognize that name, and that name can be used in this particular sheet for subsequent calculation. The name can be used for subsequent calculation. Now let's do something very simple here. Let's say we have some numbers here. Let's say we have some numbers here. I have some numbers here. I have a number here. I have a number here. I have a number here. Now I have some numbers in this very environment, and I want to create this as a range. All I need to do is highlight the area where you want to create as a range. Go to your formula menu. Go to your formula menu. When you go to your formula menu, you have this particular area that is called defined name. Defined name. This is where we can create our range name. So what I've just done now is that I've highlighted the range I want to create. So I want to give it a name. So click on defined name. When you click on defined name, Excel recognizes this area that you have highlighted, and it gives us this area as the reference area. We are referring to this particular area. And what do we want to call this area? And let's say I want to call this area, let me just make it very simple. I want to call this area ABCD. ADC. Now I want to call this area ADC. Now when I enter the name, I will click on OK. But before I do that, I want you to understand one thing here. Range name. When I talk about range name, we talk about range name in Excel. If I do this ADC and I put another, let's say, word here like this, HD, Excel will not accept this. Excel will not accept this because range name do not come with space. A range name do not come with space. So Excel do not accept a range name with space. If I want to put a space there, I will have to put something like underscore and then put the next word there. So take note, when you are trying to create a range name can be any name, but then Excel will not accept anything with space. Now I've created ADC as my range name. I'll click on OK. When I click on OK, it seems as if nothing happened. Really, something happened. A range has been created and that name has been stored in Excel. So what Excel have simply done now is Excel have simply recognized this region as ADC. So whatever I'm doing, I can refer to this very region and Excel will recognize this very region. But before we do that, let's try to find out if this very region we created really existed. If you want to check your range name to find out if it really existed, go back to your menu bar, and then you have your name manager. Name manager. Under the define name, we have our name manager. When you click on name manager, Excel is going to show us this dialog box. And this dialog box here, we have this ADC, which we just created. This is a subsequent one I created on this sheet before. That is the table we are using right now. This is a subsequent one. Then this is the range name we just created. So what we've just done now is that we've just defined a range for this particular sheet. Take note, this range can be used anywhere in this workbook. The range can be used anywhere in this workbook. So if I'm in a different location, let's say I'm in this particular sheet now. Remember, we created a range in this sheet 1. And if I'm in my other sheet, I can make reference to that particular range name, that particular range. So let's say I want to use something here, and I want to enter a formula here which says equal sum open bracket. This is supposed to be followed by what I want to sum. But then I can make reference to my range because I have a range called ADC, and close my bracket, press my enter key, and I'm having a number here. What happened here? What I've just done is that I've just told Excel to go to that very range, to go to a range called what? ADC, and sum up whatever is in that very range. So I have this 167. 167 is the total value of what we have in this particular range. So if I add any figure to this very range, let's say I add 1000 to this very range, automatically it's going to be updated here in this particular environment. So that is talking about what? A range name. And I said a cell can be regarded as what? A range name. Let's say I have this particular cell here, and in this very cell I want to do something like equal average, or let me use let me still use equal sum here. Sum open bracket. I want a sum of my ADC, and I close my bracket. Excel is going to give me the total sum of this particular range. And this particular range here, this particular cell here, I can also give this particular cell a name. I can also give this particular cell a name. Let's go back to our define name. Click on define name, and there we have the name define name window. Here we can simply call this very cell, let's say we call this very cell LA. We call this very cell LA. Now when I click this, when I click OK, this cell is now regarded to as what? LA. So Excel now regard this cell as a LA. So in this particular workbook, anywhere in this workbook, I can make reference to this particular cell called LA. What Excel will not do is that Excel will not accept any other range called LA because the range name is unique. So LA can be accepted in any other workbook, but not in this particular workbook. Let's say we want to create a new range here, and we still want to call this particular range LA, for instance, and we try to click OK. Excel will tell you that that name is already existing. So Excel is not going to accept that name, but we can give that name, that very cell, we can give it any other name. Let's say I'm calling this top, and I create that. So I have this range called top, and I can enter any record in this particular range. If I come back to this particular environment here, let's say here I want to bring in the value of whatever I have inside my LA. So what I can do now, I can say, okay, this particular cell is equal LA. If I say this particular cell is equal LA, you can see LA here. So if I press my enter key, Excel is going to pick the value of whatever you have in that cell called LA, because this cell is a range and we have given that cell a name called what? LA. So that is how we can create a range name. But then how are we going to apply this to what we are doing here? Now here, let's look at, we have our list, the list of our customers here. I can simply highlight this particular region where I have my customers. I want to name this particular region customer. So I can come over to my define name, come over here, and I say this range is going to be called customers. This range is going to be called customers. So when I click this, I have a range called customers. So instead of entering those records here, I can make reference to that particular range called customer. So what do? Let's do the same thing we've done before. We want to create a drop-down list here, but this time around we want to make reference to the range we have just created. So do you remember how we did this? Go to where? Go to your data. Under data, remember, first of all, highlight the region where you want to create the drop-down list. So go to your data. Under data, we'll go to data validation. Click on data validation. You have a dialog box like this. Change it from any value, change it to list, and then go to the source. Here in this source now, remember the other time we came out and highlighted the area where we have the record, but in this case now we already have the record inside a range. So we are now going to tell Excel that the source of this particular range is equal customers. Equal customers. Take note, this range name is case sensitive. If I type customers with capital letter, starting with capital letter, it has to be exactly the same way the name is. Customer with capital letter, all capital letter, or customer with the C small letter and everything in small letter is not the same with customers with this particular one. So if I click on OK now, if Excel find that name, it's going to make use of that name. So what I've simply tell Excel is that I'm creating a list here in this very region, but the value of this very list are going to be found in a range called customer. So let's look at that, whether it's working. We have a new record here, 1101, and okay, I missed that. So let's say this is our customer. Let's say this is our customer sheet, and this is our customer role. Now let's say this is our location. I want to briefly change that. Let's say this is our location and these are our customers. So now here I have the first order that came in, 1001, and we want to choose the customer that placed that order. The same thing we did initially. We can now see that we have the names of the customers. We have this 1002, and the name of this particular customer is this 1003, and the name of this particular customer is this. So we can see that this is a more professional way of doing this than having the list somewhere around here where we just highlighted the list. So we've created a range name that we use for this particular drop down list. Let's try the same thing for location. Now this customers, they came from different locations, and we want a situation where we just want to look at a list to pick our location from rather than typing the location. So we have our location here. I have a table here where we have some location. Now let's say we want to create this as our location. We can simply highlight this whole of this. We can simply highlight the whole of this and create a range name. So do we remember how to do that? You go to your menu bar, formula. Under formula we have what? Defined name. Now if you look at something here, it's suggesting a name for me, location, because it saw location at the top, and that is what I want to use. So I can simply say okay, that is what I want, and I click on OK. So I've created a new range called location. So I cannot make use of that very range called location here. So all I need to do, highlight this particular region and then go to where? Data. Under my data menu, click on data validation and then change it from any value to list. And then here, I will now use equal location. Equal location. And I click OK. So I can find my location from here. Let's say this guy is from this point. Let's say this person is from Ghana. And let's say this person is from Nigeria. Okay, so that is how we can create this. And let's say we want to do one more. We just want to create, let's say, the stores or the department. We have the stores here. We have the various stores, that is electronic, computers, and these are the various stores. Take note, one thing I talked about the other time is that a range name, we must make sure that the name of the range do not have what? A space in between the range name. So we want to create another range name here. I can do the same thing here. Highlight this, go to your menu bar. Under your menu bar, define name, and I want to call this range department, and I click OK. So a range department have been created, and I want that to be the list I'm going to use here. So I can simply highlight this and then go to data. Under my data, I have data validation, and I want to change this from any value to list. And where is the source of my list? The source of my list is equal department. Equal department, and I click that. And let's say this person from China is dropping an order, and that order is under our electronics department, and then this person is dropping an order under our computer department. This guy is dropping an order under our automotive department. So thank you very much. This is how we can create range name and then create drop-down list. In our subsequent class, in our next class, we are going to look at a dynamic drop-down list. We are going to look at a dynamic drop-down list. When I mean a dynamic drop-down list, under electronics, we have certain products that are under electronics. We have certain products that are under computer. We have certain products that are under this particular point. Now, if this person placed an order for a product under electronic, we can select electronic like this. But when we come to this particular point here for product, we just want to see only products that are under the electronics department. We want to see only products that are under the electronics department. When we come here to computer and this guy selects computer as the department, that is the store is placing the order. When we come over here, we want to see only products that are under the computer department. So when this guy come to automotive here, we'll come over here, we want to see only products that are under automotive. Now, this is what we want to do in our next class. That is talking about creating a dynamic list. When I talk about a dynamic list, the list is going to be dynamic in the sense that when I choose computer here, when I come over here, I should see only products from computer. When I choose electronic here, when I come over here, I should see only products from electronics. So that is what we are going to do in our next class. Thank you. If you are able to learn anything from this particular video, thank you very much.